Now, despite the challenges brought about by the pandemic, several individuals went the extra mile just to bring positive change to their communities. They are the ones named as the Outstanding Young Men for 2020. Let's get to know two of the 7 TOYM honorees, Lesley Jean Cordero, Senior Disaster Risk Management Specialist of the World Bank, and Philippine Army Captain Ron Villarosa Jr., who now join us live. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Thank you for having us.
Let's start with Attorney. You were called Disaster Queen in the previous administration, spearheading projects that dealt with calamities like Yolanda. Work that marked you for this award. Tell us about that.
Back in the previous administration, I think when Typhoon Haiyan hit, it was dubbed as the strongest typhoon that ever made landfall. And prior that, there was the Zamboanga siege. There was also Typhoon Pablo and the Bohol earthquake that was magnitude 7.2. So I was at the office of the cabinet secretary then, and every time we do this coordination meetings, because the task of the office was to put together a rehabilitation and recovery plan. So the challenge was to talk to every government agency, to talk to the affected local government units. So every time we see each other, the joke was, oh, here comes the disaster queen. I took it as a badge of honor, simply because you can see colleagues trying to do their best, trying to deliver as fast as they can, so that the people in the affected communities and local government units will have the services up in action already.
Talk about a badge of honor. Attorney, you're also an Army reservist with the rank of Major. Where do you derive this sense of nationalism and courage, or who or what were the major influences in your life?
I see a lot of friends, colleagues, Rain. I was part of this Ayala Young Leaders Congress when I was in college. And you can see a lot of people coming from various provinces, doing their best, sacrificing, as well as trying to deliver what they can in their own respective fields. So I take courage and I take pride in trying to do my best because I want to contribute also. And joining the Reserve Force back in 2012 was an opportunity to also contribute and help the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Mm-hmm. I signed up and helped out in terms of strategic communications, because back then I was with the Presidential Communications Operations Office.
I see. We'll talk about the Army and bravery. Captain Villarosa, you help plan and implement livelihood, evacuation, education, and infrastructure programs in conflict areas, turning MILF camps and training grounds and schools into schools and rice fields. What is it like on the ground? Were you deployed to these conflict zones, or was it your choice to be assigned there?
First of all po, ma'am, no, I would like to give this award back to the Armed Forces of the Philippines. This award in community development really is a testament dun sa dedication ng ating soldiers on the ground para po ma-win natin yung peace. So, the developmental approach to conflict, ma'am, we must understand that in this area, especially in the troubled areas, very challenging po ang governance, where the government is weak. Certain groups of people are taking advantage of the ground to take control over the people. So, yung po yung nagiging task namin, that's our role on the ground, is to prevent threat groups from taking advantage dun sa mga tao and to support the local governance to reduce the vulnerabilities of certain communities. This falls under the development and governance security framework natin. By providing the needs of the people, we are able to prevent violent extremist groups from taking hold of this group of people in exchange for money, food, or certain sustenance. In Basilan, ma'am, we have worked with the MILFs, with the MNLFs, and other armed groups. And isa po sa breakthrough natin doon was the introduction of the program against violent extremism by the then ARMM. What we found out there from our interviews with the returnees is that most of them are actually fighting because of basic needs, not really because of the ideology na we thought they were fighting for. And because of that, we started to have this developmental approach in certain communities. We have this from guns to books projects, from tractors, from tanks to tractors. na before soldiers used to go into their camps, bringing in bullets, ammunitions, taking lives. Pero ngayon, we're going inside their camps, bringing in books, bringing in farm tractors, and giving them a new life. So that is the transformation that we have. And that is the level of commitment that our armed forces has para sa mga communities na yun in order to win the peace.
And you even communicate this idea to the people that you meet. But I'm sure there are very few of you. What kind of person would it take to help people in conflict zones?
Actually po, ma'am, it takes an ordinary kind of person to actually help anyone. Pero being in a conflict zone, I could say that it's really an honor for me to be a part of the armed forces. As a history, I grew up in the Middle East, and growing up in the Middle East, I experienced being bullied by other nationalities. So my mindset back then, sabi ko, when I go back to the Philippines, when I go back home, hindi nyo ako dun maaapi dahil bahay ko yon. And that probably is one of my motivation. Now, whatever we have right now, we just need to improve. If we think that it is greener on the other side of the fence, then might as well we start watering our own field or our own garden para we could have a better life dito sa atin. I started out as part of the AFP Reserve Force. I'm a product of the Advanced ROTC program. And from there, makikita mo talaga yung commitment din ng iba't ibang kasundaluhan natin, especially our AFP reservists, and much more when we were incorporated as part of the active force ng AFP, being a lieutenant in the Special Forces, na immersed kami sa iba't ibang conflict areas. And dun mo talaga makikita na you need to become a part of the solution. Maraming stories sa ground that really needs to be told, and much more yung problems na nasa ground can actually be resolved through action. It's about converting passion to action rather than just looking at the problem and doing nothing. So really it's nothing really special na everyone can actually do it so long as you're willing to do your part and actually do something for the country rather than waiting for the country to do something for you.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, back to Attorney Cordero, you're in charge of a $1 billion program for the Philippines as the Senior Disaster Risk Management Specialist for the World Bank now. What do you hope to achieve with this program at this post? How much time are you giving yourself to accomplish these?
For this program that we're talking about, it's a disaster risk management policy loan. But we're talking about a long-standing engagement with the Philippine government for every disaster, for every typhoon that happens. But before doing all these programs, we're talking about helping build and strengthen the policy, regulations, and framework for disaster risk reduction so that a government, both at the national level, at the local government level, and at the community level, would be able to prepare, to respond faster, and to recover also better. And this has always been the challenge, right? And what the World Bank is doing is helping the government with this disaster risk management reforms, and also putting in place a disaster risk finance and insurance strategy to be able to pay for all these interventions that's needed. We're looking at a horizon of 2 years for this program. But as I've mentioned, for the past, I think, 10 to 12 years, the World Bank is engaged with the Philippine government, helping them in this endeavor.
Right, but now that we're in a time of a pandemic, based on the risk assessments that you know, having to weigh the safety of the people against the economy, what would you recommend to our leaders and our people?
Quickly, I think, number one, to put in place a plan, something that is clear, strategic, as well as a plan that is flexible, and to communicate it to the public. Because now more than ever, what we need is a sense of leadership, calm, and presence of the government so that people would feel safe and secure and confident. And we're talking about the rest of the world having to grapple with this pandemic. Everyone was caught off guard. And the challenge now is the ability to adjust, adapt, and execute. And as we move towards slowly reopening and trying to also manage some of the transmissions that we are getting bits and pieces from various areas, the key is also to be able to adjust that and to help in terms of local government units being prepared. And we have seen several local chief executives, Mayor of Pasig, who's also an awardee, just approved their vaccination program. And we're helping encourage more local government out there to do the same as being frontliners. That's the first one. The second is to communicate, to do it in a way where people could understand, and not just the decision makers, the policy makers, but bring it down to the level of the household, the communities, because it would put them at ease. And then to ask everyone to also contribute. And of course, leveraging on non-government entities, the private sector, civil society organizations, the academe, the development partners, and then the communities.
Well, at the forefront or even the front lines of the execution of the antivirus plan is also the Army. Captain Villarosa, the military and police get a lot of flack for the drug war and the wayward personalities that paint uniformed personnel in a bad light despite all your efforts. But your work is tough, and few armchair advocates and people on their high horses would actually get on the ground and get dirty. As a TOYM awardee from the military, what kind of model would you have to be to uplift the image of the uniformed personnel?
That is a very pressing question, ma'am, and I would take some time to get this sorted out. I believe in Einstein saying, peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved through understanding. The best way to understand the ground is to eat with the people, live with the people, and sleep with the people. In that way, you get to experience what they experience. It is not bad relying on data from a paper, but at least you need to have some sensible amount of time on the ground to really understand where people are coming from. And in our profession as lieutenants, we are really exposed sa ground. And because of that, we get to experience what other people are really experiencing, and we could formulate through our trainings on how to resolve those issues that they have on hand. The most important thing when it comes to these types of work, especially developmental works, in our developmental approach to conflict, is to really understand what's going on the ground and provide solutions as early as possible. Most of the times, when people are not really capacitated to take on this challenging task, rather than resolving the problem, ang ginagawa nila is they add to the problem by putting on more burden. So sa end po namin, ma'am, we don't really do that. Our job as ground troops is to understand the conflict and to isolate what needs to be done and resolved, and whether it can be achieved through lethal or non-lethal means. So maybe the greatest takeaway here is that there are many other silent workers. Again, ma'am, this award goes to the whole of the AFP, and we have so many soldiers out there reaching out to different communities that far is more, that paints a greater image of the AFP as a nation builder rather than a human rights violator. And we are very proud to say, ma'am, for the past years that the AFP has not recorded, has not been charged with any human rights violation. And that is just a testament na on the ground, our troops are doing well, and we are doing our job in protecting and serving the Filipino people.
Well, Captain, you received the TOYM Award for Community Development and Military Service for many different programs you've developed and helped with, not least of which were systems that prevented extremists from re-entering these communities and sowing violence. I'm sure your family can't be too thrilled that you're facing risks every day. At some point, you must think that there is an opportunity for personal development here. What would that be? What is your goal for yourself, and what are the ways by which this service can give back to you?
Yes, ma'am. Hindi po may iwasan yon bilang isang sundalo na you're really putting your life on the line. for something which is far greater than just yourself. The opportunity really is growth, personal and professional growth. I've developed a lot from the person who I used to be. Before, I just cry for change, but really don't know how to get it done. So the armed forces gave me the necessary trainings and platforms to really improve myself until I can participate in nation building. First, the armed forces will give you the rank and responsibility to get things done. But later, you will really realize, even without the rank, you could actually accomplish something. And napakalaking bagay yon because first, you are really mandated to do something, but going out of the service, you realize that you're a really different person than who you were before. And that is one thing no one can ever take away from you. That's one thing that you've earned by doing your work. And isa pa sa perhaps the greatest accomplishment that I could hand down is the random acts of kindness na you could really inflict dun sa communities that you have. Ang lagi namin sinasabi dun sa mga tao na natutulungan namin is that you owe us something. You really owe us something, pero hindi kami yung babalikan nyo nun. Ang balikan nyo nun is yung kapitbahay nyo, ang balikan nyo nun is yung hindi nyo kakilala, ang balikan nyo nun yung taong nasa paligid nyo. And in that way, you can pay us back. And who knows, at the end of the day, meron sa kanilang lumapit, someone would approach them with a surname probably the same as mine, and probably ask them for help. Pag natulungan na nila yung tao na yun, and most likely that would be my kids, then sa tingin ko, accomplish na ako sa nagawa ko. Things that you do would really go around, and helping other people in the uniform service or outside the uniform service will really create ripples of positive change. And that is what we are all after. We are out here to improve the country, and we are out here to help the Filipino people.
It's amazing that even as you've both faced so much strife already, you've seen so much difficulty and challenges, you remain both idealistic and optimism. And perhaps this is just for the both of you, Attorney and Captain, very quickly, one-liners perhaps. One newspaper article dubbed you as TOYM awardees, millennials at their finest, standing out despite the generation, or is it for the generation? You were chosen by some of the most illustrious names in Philippine law, business, and governance. Does it matter what generation you're from? What does it take to be an outstanding young person now? What do you think this TOYM award affords you now in terms of the work you're doing and the kind of message you'd like to send out?
I'll go first.
Yes.
Everyone says it takes so much to be outstanding, but for me, I'm a simple provinciana from Cebu, and my dad's also from Surigao. So I just say that to stand out, you don't have to do extraordinary things, but it's more of doing the ordinary things extraordinarily well. And I think every young person, every young Filipino can do this. And this is part of our contribution to the Philippines, to our communities, to our organizations that we are connected with. But the challenge now is when we got this award, I'm truly grateful and humbled more than anything, because it means that I have the greater responsibility and burden to keep on paying it forward, an opportunity to inspire more young people to do the same. And I think it would be best to say, for the young people out there, don't worry about which generation you belong to. Have that opportunity to dream big and try to live to fulfill those dreams. And that way, you are trying to pay it forward and inspire the next generation who will come after us.
All right. Captain, go ahead. Captain? Yeah.
Yes, I believe, ma'am, that the recognition is... Yes, ma'am. I believe the recognition is within itself a challenge, not only to us, but for other generations to come. And that the award inspires others to do more, regardless of your status in life, regardless of your occupation. You are outstanding within yourself, so long as you serve other people. You must always aspire to transform passion to action. And by helping others, you are helping your country. And again, I would like to reiterate that in the uniformed service, your armed forces is a defender of the Filipino people and the state. Ang sa amin po is we do not differentiate between any religion, mapa-Kristiyano ka man or Muslim, any tribe, whether Tausug ka man, Magindanaon, Maranao, Ilonggo, Bisaya, Ilocano. So long as you're a Filipino, the armed forces will protect and serve you. And that also proves true to all of us. So long as you are a Filipino, you must also learn to serve others and not to be served by others. And we hope that this will become an inspiration for other generations as well.
Attorney Lesley Jean Cordero of the World Bank and Philippine Army Captain Ron Villarosa Jr. Pleasure to have two of the 7 outstanding young men honorees, offering some inspiration in a struggling world today. Thank you so much for joining us. More success and stay safe.
Thank you very much, Ray.